Beaming out across the galaxy, this is where conspiracy on the wild side meets the perspective of a lifetime. This is the Freezone with your host, Freeman.
Hello and welcome to the Freezone. Well, 2020 is not letting us down if you are looking for an amazing world that is just going delusional. If you're ready for surreality, well, 2020 is your year. And of course, 2020 always speaks to vision, right? And I've been watching as things have been going on, and I just wanted to put a couple of things on the record real fast here before we introduce the guest tonight. And that is the idea of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Biden, Kamala Harris, right? Everybody's shocked. No one's not shocked about this choice, and no one understands what's going on. Sleepy Joe Biden with horrible Kamala Harris. Horrible, I guess, is what Kamala means in Finnish, I think. So either way, she's pushing people into prison, putting parents in prison for jail for not bringing their kids to school. You know, the things that she did in her past obviously are not up to date with the current radical left. And so this whole thing with Donald Trump versus Joe Biden with Kamala, I don't believe this is what's coming. I really just don't. I can't believe that we would even have a presidential election between Biden and Trump. My brain won't allow it, right? My brain says, hell no, Biden is not the choice. He's something that's just keeping everything preoccupied. He's an act of prestidigitation, a sleight of hand. And so my brain just calculating what they need, where they're going, all the rocket launches, the New World Order, everything that's coming up, the new 6G, right? Moving on. I'm coasting ahead to 6G when we have our synthetic drones and our duplicates, our doppelgangers inside of the cloud. And honestly, I feel like the October surprise would be, and I'm not making any predictions, but I'm looking at the puzzle and have been for, well, longer than most of you have been alive, as I'm realizing, I started this in 1993, right? So I think it's going to be a surprise attack from another side, the unity ticket. I believe that Mitt Romney and John Kerry are going to suddenly pop into the scene and be the unity ticket running mates that come on. And believe me, I hate to say it, but if Mitt Romney or John Kerry went up against Donald Trump in a debate, Trump would lose. I mean, he's not the sharpest crayon in the box. I'm sorry, but I just can't believe that Joe Biden's the pick, this is going to be the election. And the other thing is, the New World Order. Now, one sign that I've been watching for decade, at least, I've had a Google search for this for a decade, is the Temple Mount, the idea of the Alaska Mosque becoming the signal of the New World Order's final capping of the Great Pyramid with gold. And sure enough, the president just announced the Vision for Peace, which the Abraham Accord that follows the Vision for Peace that has been laid out, stating that Muslims will be able to visit the Alaska Mosque if they come in peace. And it is called the Abraham Accord because Abraham is included in all three of the religions, the Hebrew, the Christian, and the Muslims. So this just happened, right? This announcement of the Abraham Accord with the allowing Muslims to pray inside the Alaska Mosque. This is a signal I have been watching for a long time. I don't know what's going to come of it. I don't know if this is that moment that I've been expecting or not, but it was a very big deal. So lots going on in 2020. It's a crazy year, and yet we're still dealing with human trafficking. People are becoming aware of the sex trade, the child sex trade, and all of the crazy things that are going on, and how much foreknowledge we had, and how much this had been introduced into the culture through music, through videos, through Hollywood. And there's no one better to jump into this than the amazing Mark Devlin, who started his career as a DJ in UK, and then just as more and more became obvious to him, he had no choice but to speak about these dark forces. And this led to his book, Musical Truth. And we're going to get into his debut novel as well, The Cause and the Cure, as we start to get deeper into this situation. So please welcome to the Freezone, the amazing and wonderful Mark Devlin.
Well, what an introduction, brother. Thanks so much for that. Great to be back with you as we navigate our way through the new crazy, the world of 2020, right?
We've reached the point where you just can't remain silent, haven't we?
Absolutely. And if we think 2020 has been a trip, I have a feeling 2021 is going to take things to the next level as well. But we should be a little more used to it by the time the year turns. But yeah, boy, I mean, who had any clue on New Year's Day 2020 that we'd be living our lives in this way a few months down the line?
I didn't even believe it when it was happening.
Yeah, I mean, the crazy thing is the likes of you and I and many others have been warning about these types of scenarios for years. We've been putting it into our research. We've been putting out books and lectures and podcasts and videos saying this is what the world could look like if we allow it to happen, if we don't stand up to the tyranny, if we don't heed the warning signs. And yet I don't think many of us were ready for it or believed that it would go so far. It's certainly that way with me. I was familiar with all the items on the checklist of the Agenda 2030 New World Order, and we see so many of those coming to fruition now. But I never imagined they'd all get thrown at us at once, and I never imagined they'd be able to fast-track things to where they've currently got them, even with all the background knowledge I had of what the plans were and all the documentation that's been put out there over the years and all the foreknowledge that has crept into Hollywood movies and all these popular culture vehicles, indicating that all this stuff was on the way. It took me by surprise. I don't know if it's that way with you, but many other researchers that I've spoken to have said the same thing. I guess we should have heeded our own research and our own advice a little bit more.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, it definitely, I saw it at the beginning and I thought, this, they showed their hand is what I was saying. Like they've just gone too far. No one's going to buy this. Yeah. That's what I was saying back in, when was that, how long has it been? I don't even know. Like
we're about 6 months deep into this madness, aren't we? Since the first lockdowns came in, and it feels like forever. They talk about the new normal, and so many people are getting used to this. And I've heard conversations in shops where customers have said to staff, how are people taking to all this distancing and wearing masks and stuff? And the member of staff says, they're getting used to it. They're slowly coming around to it, which of course is the plan.
Right.
And that's the big danger. People will get used to the way we're now living, and it will just become regular ways of doing things. And that's all part of the plan, of course. So we've got to reverse that and take people back to the way things used to be, which weren't really so bad compared with what we've got now, right?
Yeah, I thought it was bad back then, W and even HW in those days. And it's just... Yeah, I don't even know what to think about how everybody's reacting to this and how different the world is from the time that I was a child. From the moment the World Wide Web was foisted upon humanity, which could have been the ultimate tool throughout all of this. Imagine if we had all the doctors in the world having a forum on even Facebook, and they were giving us all their knowledge and everybody was able to come together all around the world. I mean, that was the promise of the World Wide Web. And instead, we get all this major censorship and deletions and demonetizations and just everybody's going down.
I know, man. And it's just so difficult to get a handle on what's really happening here, because when all this stuff kicked off back in February, March, I really thought, this is it. They're dumping their whole New World Order toolkit on us all at once. And I was getting so much doom and gloom and dread from other truthers. Every single message I got was, oh my God, we're all screwed. You know, they're actually going for this. They're actually doing it. And people were saying this is the end of humanity as we know it, and society will never be the same again. And I had to shut down from all of that for a few days early on because it was just doing my head in, and I had to acclimatize myself to it. And then I realized that I couldn't, ignore it, and I had to get back on the battlefield and contribute and play my part. So I got involved in the whole thing and threw myself into researching what was really going on. And I've been through so many mind states over the months, going from complete depression and desolation and just being completely distraught at what's going on in the world, to other days where I'm actually high on hope and optimism and positivity, and then every possible human emotion in between.
Right.
And I'm at a stage now where I still can't work out whether we've got this evil control system that's more powerful now than it ever was, and they really are fast tracking us to where they've wanted to take us for so long, and they're stepping up the agenda big time, or whether we're witnessing a control system that's actually in its death throes and is getting desperate. And the reason it's thrown everything they've got at us all at once is because they think they're running out of time to get it done the way they normally do, via the totalitarian tiptoe, doing it by stealth and doing it in incremental steps, which is their usual MO, So the question is, has something come along to cause them to panic and want to do everything they can all at once? And we can only speculate as to whether that's the case. But my own research over the past few months and a couple of presentations that I've done recently have involved looking at other things that are going on in the world under the cover of the coronavirus situation. So while everyone is obsessed with the mainstream media narrative and what the government is saying about coronavirus this, coronavirus that, there has been a whole heap of interesting stuff going on. While everyone's turned in one direction, good advice is often to look in other directions to see what you might be missing. And, we can get into some of this, but the world sure is an interesting place in 2020, and not just because of the coronavirus and social distancing and masks and all the rest of it, you may have noticed.
This is a very important point. And same as you, when this came down, I had the same thought, like this, they're pushing their hand. What has pushed them? Why? It wasn't, we weren't the, right. Because we've already been on top of this. It wasn't like, oh my God, what are they doing? It was, why are they doing it now? Right. And my first assumption as I looked at the puzzle, but it didn't make entire sense because it seemed to be Donald Trump. And I wondered if, the New World Order has been filling the presidencies for decades, all the way back to H.W., the head of the CIA, becoming president, and no one seemed to care, to now, as they started to lay out all these executive orders and giving the president more power. And what I felt was, well, maybe they made up this whole system, and then Trump came in and stole the keys to the castle, and now he has all these dictatorial powers to use against them. But this did not make complete sense of what I was seeing going on, because it's global, and I know it's not Trump, right? It's not entirely Trump, if it is Trump at all, because this whole action is going on, it's global, right? Right. It can't have to do with the American election. It shouldn't anyway, unless there's that much power in America, right? But then as we started to witness the continuity of government coming down, all of a sudden they had General O'Shaughnessy coming up from the deep underground base at Cheyenne Mountain at Space Command, announcing that he was going to make sure that everybody was safe, that we have now moved into a continuity of government, which meant FEMA legitimately had taken over. The president was no longer in power. The military was. And then we had General O'Shaughnessy there in the deep underground base sending us messages about the hospitals and the special field hospitals that they were putting up, and that they were going to put these two boats on either side of the continent, the Mercy and the other that I can't ever remember the name of, but they had the two ships out there. And they didn't use any of that, right? None of it. None of the field hospitals, none of the boats, nothing. No one, not one single COVID patient went into any of these. But
that's right.
what I had been watching was asteroids. And everything I saw coming down the pipe, from the continuity government, General O'Shaughnessy and Space Command and all of that, was an asteroid threat. And so I went on the record at that point saying, I think that this is an asteroid threat. And sure enough, that was real. They announced that, yes, there was a major asteroid threat. And then they really diminished the whole thing, because if you actually watch Jet Propulsion Laboratories' simulation of the incoming bodies, there was this horde of asteroids heading straight for planet Earth, right? They're supposed to hit the day of the lockdowns. And we were just missed. I mean, it was the closest near miss since the extinction of dinosaurs, if you believe in any of that. I mean, it almost happened. And that was the day of the lockdown. So then I'm like, well, maybe that was what's going on. And sure enough, right after that, they started breaking up the field hospitals. The boats took off. All of that ended. So there was a possibility that we were just about to have an extinction level event, and they were all preparing for it.
Well, that reminds me of a Busta Rhymes album from back in the day, which was called Extinction Level Event. And Busta Rhymes put out a whole load of albums actually in the 90s that all hinted at a calamity or a disaster about to hit humankind. He had one called When Disaster Strikes, but, that's kind of by the by. I haven't been down the asteroid road in terms of researching that particular thing, but what I was alluding to in what I previously said was, of course, what's come to be known as the Q plan. And I know half your audience are probably rolling their eyes at the mention of that phrase, and maybe the other half are pumping their fist in the air. It certainly does divide opinion, but either way, there is a school of thought that what is really going on is that there is this group working under this individual, if it is an individual or maybe a group of individuals known as Q, in conjunction with Donald Trump. And the plan is to take down what's known as the deep state cabal kind of from the inside, and to dismantle the establishment control system we've had presiding over us for so long, and bringing to justice all these criminal gangs and all these pedophiles and all these child traffickers and all of this. And while it's tempting to dismiss that whole thing as straight fantasy, because the thing about it is, as the mission by its very nature has to be top secret and covert, that means there aren't readily available proofs and evidence and documents to confirm what's going on. By its very nature, it has to be open to a great deal of speculation and conjecture. But many people are of the view that that's what we're really witnessing here. And the control system wheeled out their COVID-19 master plan, and we can know that this had been planned for many years because of all the examples of predictive programming and all the aspects of it that were placed into movies and music videos, and Madonna's performance at the Eurovision Song Contest last year and all this. I did a presentation for Truth Juice in Birmingham just last week, where I laid out all the many examples of references to the coronavirus situation that we've got in popular culture, and also the many documents that talk about it as well, from the Rockefeller Foundation lockstep document of 2010. So at least 10 years ago, this was known to be coming, but even further back than that. So the COVID-19 thing was a master tactic from the control system that they'd always planned to drop on us. But many people are of the view that, those people that give validity to the Q group, that they've kind of taken this situation to their advantage and used it to work undercover of the obsession and the paranoia that there is about this deadly virus to get their job done in the background. And much of this work is said to involve the clearing out of many of these underground tunnel systems and deep underground military bases where it's claimed children have been kept captive for the longest time. This has been going on forever under this control system. And children have been abused down there and raped and tortured and murdered. It's absolutely horrific stuff. And this has come into my research before. I've heard suggestions of this over the course of the last 10 years. It's not something that's just come along in 2020. But the suggestion is that these tunnel systems are now getting shut down and destroyed, and these children are getting rescued. And as I say, it's very difficult to confirm this because it's not as if there is documentation available to verify it. it has to go by a certain amount of faith and, the phrase trust the plan. So I'm very much observing this whole situation from the sidelines, and I neither completely accept it nor dismiss it. I can't throw it out because I'm seeing a few signs here and there of things happening. There certainly have been arrests of certain low-level pedophiles and child trafficking gangs. None of the big names that people have heard of, none of the big names that many people would like to hear of being brought to justice over this. But lots of very strange stuff this year as well, such as the British royal family appear to have gone. Where is the Queen? She seems to have gone into hiding, or has she been arrested, or has she just been moved off somewhere? There was a Sky News interview the other month where they wheeled out a fake Prince Charles, giving his view on the effects of the pandemic, but quite clearly, blatantly, to anyone with two eyes to see and a mind to think, it wasn't Prince Charles. It was an imposter, an actor, a double. So what is the need for all these measures if there isn't something going on that they don't want the general public to know about? So this is why I say it becomes very interesting to look at what the news is not telling you, but you can nevertheless find out about if you know what places to look in. And it puts a very different slant on the whole situation. I'm sure you've looked into the Q situation yourself, Freeman. I just wonder what you make of all of that. Do you place any stock in it?
I have looked, but not deeply, right? I feel like the Q movement is finally catching up to the Freeman perspective because I see them showing corporate logos and finally getting into some of these topics that we've been covering all this time.
Probably watch your show.
Huh?
They probably watch your show.
Yeah. The early TV shows is where it's at, folks. That's where it all got laid out in the Freeman perspective. But yes, it is happening. We are seeing it happening. We are witnessing the shutdown of these major child trafficking and human trafficking rings. The president is talking about it. I don't think I've ever heard a president utter the words human trafficking before. And we're witnessing as these people are going down. One thing I wanted to put in my own opinion here on Donald Trump saying to Ghislaine Maxwell, well, I wish her luck.
Yeah.
A lot of people got offended by that. A lot of people were like, what? And I was saying, no, that's what you want your leader to say. Innocent until proven guilty. He did exactly what I want my leader to do. To say, well, I hope she does all right, and if she's guilty, then she's guilty. But we cannot allow the mob to determine who's guilty and who's not. So when he said those words and everybody got upset, I was cheering. I was like, yeah, I want a leader that says I'm innocent until proven guilty. So I wanted to cover that. But yes, we are witnessing this child trafficking thing, pedophile rings coming to the surface in a major way. So in that sense, then I definitely have been sitting by Q watching as that part of the puzzle was coming forward. I was a little distressed by the idea of only giving clues and then have people figure it out through their own opinions. But what you're saying is so important, that the COVID is covered. It is covered. It is. I don't even know if there is a virus, right? I don't even know if this is just the flu expanded into numbers, and I have no idea, right? Like, if there was a deadly pandemic, I think I would know. So we definitely have to look on the other side of the puzzle. And as we see Tom Hanks moving to Greece, where pedophilia is not a sexual orientation, which that's what they've been trying to move towards, is have pedophilia as a sexual orientation. We've talked about this, but that in Greece it's a disability, and you can actually receive a check. And next thing you know, Tom Hanks is getting citizenship in Greece. So we are seeing as all of these things. Okay, so the latest one was Dan Harmon. And Dan Harmon was the creator of the cartoon, very famous cartoon, Rick and Morty, extremely popular, crass, debased, hard to watch if you're a regular human, I think. But people have been brought, as you've witnessed through this, Mark, as the degradation of culture So Rick and Morty, for me, it was like, Beavis and Butthead and Married with Children, and even The Simpsons, and then up to Rick and Morty. As I watched the decline of culture, as I just saw it being programmed into everybody. Well, it turns out Dan Harmon had tried to do. Dan Harmon is the creator of Rick and Morty and Community, the television show, which I actually did enjoy. And he made a pilot back in 2009 for a show called Daryl, where he rapes a baby doll, and it's all over Twitter right now. It is trending on Twitter as everybody passes that video around. Now, it turns out in 2018, Dan Harmon came forward and apologized for making such a crass skit and tried to put it off as, just satire. And then on top of this one, the troll doll. Have you seen the troll doll?
Yeah, I saw that in the week. I took the kids to see the movie.
Right.
So I have some programming to undo. But yeah, I saw a video about the doll and the secret button and the noises it makes.
And why? Why? Right? Like these kind of things. Now, my mom was saved from the Catholics when the Nazis showed up and went down into the deep underground base, or deep underground tunnels that led between the monastery and the convent. And my mom was in this Catholic school in Germany, and the Nazis came and they went down into that deep tunnel, and they brought up baby bones, they brought up sex toys, they brought up all this creepy stuff. And they told my mom and the other children that were there, look, we are saving you from these people. So that's my mom in the 40s, right? And this is now 2020, and this is a order, right? We'll call them an order, whatever you want to call it. This cult that has existed since biblical times, and this is just normal. They're cannibals. These people are cannibals. And that's where we get the line of Cain and the Canaan and the cannibals and all of this coming forward. So, yeah. Do you think, Mark, that these strange fires and explosions going on all over this month might have something to do with the removal of these deep underground centers?
Well, I'm thinking that there was a video doing the rounds coming out of Melbourne, Australia, which purported to be a fire just within the last few days. And as far as I can tell, that video has been debunked, and it was of a battery recycling factory fire from 2019. So that's been passed off as a new one. But that's not to say this isn't going on. I've seen other accounts of earth tremors going on in various parts of the world, Australia, over the United States, different countries, and they often correlate with the cities that we hear have these underground tunnel systems beneath them. And many of these bases that we hear about will be DUMBs, deep underground military bases, meaning they were dug out for military usage, who knows how many decades ago, but they've been used for all this disgraceful, horrific, sordid stuff ever since. So it really does feel like the general public is getting primed to have to face up to some very harsh truths in the near future. So one of the things I've featured in my presentation recently, and I've mentioned it in one of my videos, is that a few weeks ago, there was a mention of the horrific practice of adrenochrome harvesting from children, which made a mainstream Turkish TV news program. Right. It was incredible. It's like the evening news, and you've got this guy addressing the nation, and he's talking about how famous people, celebrities, politicians, other people in the public eye are involved in child sex trafficking. And part of this involves the extraction of adrenochrome from children. And this is a substance, a chemical, which is secreted at times of intense trauma, mainly when the child is in a life or death situation or just on the point of death. And it's the body's way of trying to keep the child alive by secreting this life-giving substance. And It's reportedly, so we hear, extracted and has been, this practice has been going on forever, probably going all the way back to the ancient world. And it becomes very addictive for these celebrities and these famous people that are into it. They believe it gives them life-giving properties. It keeps them forever young. Many of these celebs that look years or decades younger than they actually are, that's said to be the result of them ingesting adrenochrome. So all of this was discussed on Turkish national TV. And there were a couple of other news networks in Europe that got onto that as well. It was mentioned in Bulgaria. It was mentioned on Austrian TV. And I wondered if that was going to go viral, excuse the pun, and hit many of these other countries' mainstream TV networks. It appears to have been capped at just those few, but it remains incredible that that got discussed on mainstream TV. And I have to wonder whether we're on the verge of some major disclosure of all the sordid stuff that the so-called elite ruling class get up to, all the stuff that I've mentioned in my books and that you've mentioned on in your shows over the years. There's a school of thought that what is happening now is the general public is just getting pushed and prodded and tortured and tormented so much by everything that's being brought in the name of this so-called virus. They're getting primed and getting prepped to face up to the fact that we have criminal pedophiles and Satanists and Luciferians, dark occultists presiding over us in every walk of life. The likes of us have known this for years, of course, but the average normie, the average member of the public has no idea of this. They still trust and believe in government. They still trust and believe in religious institutions. They still actually believe that the mainstream media is telling them the truth. So they've got some very harsh shocks on the way when they're forced to face up to the fact that this is not what's really going on in the world. The world is very different to all of that. So many people think that all these restrictions getting placed on people, all the contradictions and the flip-flopping and the mixed messages that we're getting from governments, all the tyranny that's getting rolled out, these lockdowns, forced closure of businesses, forced wearing of masks, all the social distancing madness, not being able to do all the things you used to do, having your freedom of movement severely restricted, is a way of getting people to face up to the fact that the government is not your friend. They don't have your best interests at heart. And, you've got to face up to some very hard truths that are on the way. And I'm really starting to wonder if that is the case, because this virus thing is just getting dragged out month after month. Is way beyond a joke now. It amazes me that people are still falling for the official line on things. It amazes me that there are still people meekly obeying and complying and wearing that mask when they go in the store because they've been told to, and they don't question how it is that it's okay to go into a pub or a restaurant and sit there for 3 hours with 100 people around you without a mask on. And yet, if you nip into the shop for a can of Coke for 30 seconds, you've got to put a face nappy on, even if there's only 3 other people in the shop. People aren't questioning this. They're still buying the lies. They're still buying the tyranny. They're doing whatever the government tells them. And I just wonder where people's line in the sand is. How far has all this got to go? There's nothing sadder for me than to see big, strapping, strong, hulking men with, shaven heads and tattoos wearing a mask and timidly walking around a store and just obeying all the dictates and the rules and regulations, standing behind bits of tape and stuff, when these are the very people that should be at the forefront of resistance and major revolution, rising up and resisting this tyranny and sending a very clear message back to the government that we're not having this. We don't consent. This is madness. This is not about keeping us safe. Where's common sense? Where's dignity? Where's self-respect? All of this. And yet people are still buying it. So it seems there's still a way to go in terms of pushing and prodding and tormenting people to the point where they really have had enough. And you've got to wonder whether all this is a way of getting people ready for manning up, growing a backbone, growing a pair of balls, and just facing up to what's really going on.
No doubt about it. I still have refused to wear a mask, and it's just as uncomfortable to not wear it. I'm in the grocery store. The other day I was there, and they had all the management heads of departments there. I don't know what was going on, but they were having meetings all over the grocery store, and they are all the men in their suits and ties. But they, of course, every other person in the grocery store, including them, were wearing masks. Everyone but me. And I just run around and I'm happy with everybody knows me at the grocery store, the bakery lady and the meat guy, and, they know me. I talk to them all the time. So no one treated me different at all. All the men in their suits, they waved and said hi with smiling eyes. Of course, that was the only way I could tell that they were smiling. But yet when I walked out of there, I had a tension headache. It was just so much pressure to be that guy. I compared myself to an alien anthropologist. Like I want to participate in your culture, but I feel disingenuous by doing so because I'm not really part of your culture. I'm an alien anthropologist kind of visiting your planet, checking things out. And yeah, if I wanted to fade in, I'd wear the mask. But I don't really believe in your religion, so I'm not gonna, be disingenuous and do this just to act like it. So it's, that's how I feel in these things. But then on the other side, this child trafficking, right? So again, at the grocery store, because this is the only place I go, I'm standing there in the aisle having a mask discussion with some random lady. And of course, she had her mask below her nose, like it's so useless, right? And I'm just talking about the falsity of it all. I'm talking about Fauci and this, that, and the other. And they're like, so she says, well, what do you think this is all about? And I said, well, you don't hear anyone talking about Epstein anymore, do you? And the entire aisle chimed in, like, yeah. But there's another level that you mentioned, and that is the depression that comes along with understanding the truth of the situation. Once you realize, you go through the stages of grief. When you find out the world is not as you thought it was and that your future is nothing like you thought it was going to be, when you finally come to that realization, you go through the stages of grief as if a doctor had come and told you that you were dying, because your future is completely different. Everything has changed. It's not the same. So you will go through the stages of grief. So look through that. Those of us that have been doing this, like Mark and I, who have, willingly stuck our heads down the dark hole, and then went through all the depression. Because believe me, when I was studying Anna Nicole Brittany and mind control, I was depressed. I was freaking out. I was scared. I was sleeping with a knife under my pillow. I just now remembered that. After I read, he died, and he's been such a great mentor on this show. Mark, let me try and think of the name of his book. Oh, crap. I was reading, where's it gone? It was right there that it's gone.
It happens.
Program to Kill.
Oh, Dave McGowan. Program to Kill. And I was reading that while studying everything else, and folks, if you haven't heard the shows with David McGowan, go search it on Freeman TV. And, poor guy, it's so sad that he died. But, here he was, just another normal old Joe construction worker that stumbled upon this mess. And then, Program to Kill doesn't jump to any conclusions. It only gives you evidence. And by the time you're done with it, you're sleeping with a knife under your pillow like me, waiting for the satanic cult to come take you out, because it's so easy for them. They have control of the courts. They have control of the police. They have control of the governments. And you got really very little hope in all of this. So, that's something a fire that we have walked through already, and now the world is going to be asked to walk through that, right? Well, the thing is, you used to be able to ignore all the madness ways in which the general public were getting mind controlled and socially engineered and programmed and manipulated. If, like us, you'd done the research and you realized that TV and all popular culture, movies, music, all the rest of it is there to mind control you and entrain you in how to think and to shape and mold your perceptions and your thoughts about things, you could if you chose prior to this year, just ignore all of that and not be a party to it. And when you look at the sheep-like behaviors of the general public, the masses, the way they used to behave, I mean, just as an example, prior to this year, I used to travel a lot. I used to fly a lot. That's a thing of the past now. I did actually have to get on a flight last night, and I was forced under duress against my will to wear a face mask, and it was horrific. I had to wear one of these things for about 50 minutes. I tried everything to resist it, but I was getting told that if I didn't comply, I wasn't going to be able to board. And I was with my family. We'd been on holiday. We were coming back, and it really would have been a case of my family coming home and me being stuck in Northern Ireland where we were. So I had to comply, but I hated wearing this thing. You know, I could just feel my face heating up from my expelled breath, and it just felt horrible. It just felt like if you wear one of these things all day, you are going to get ill, and that's probably part of the plan. But anyway, so I used to travel a lot. I used to take a lot of flights, and I noticed that with a lot of the budget airlines that I used to take, you know, as soon as they announced that the flight is ready for departure at the gate, everyone would get up and get into a queue. And more often than not, they'd be stood in that queue for about 20, 30 minutes. And then eventually they'd all file obediently onto the plane and they take their seats. But the thing is, they're numbered seats. You already know your seat. You have it right there on your boarding pass. So you gain nothing by standing in a queue for 30 minutes other than sore legs. And I was always the last to board a flight. I'd let everyone else get on, then I get on, I take my seat, and the plane is ready to go. You reduce the amount of time you're sat on the plane then. And I used to think, you know, it's so stupid that people behave this way, but I'm not going to behave like it. It's their choice to. I'm just going to stay outside of that. But now you no longer have the choice not to behave like everyone else. It's been taken away from you because we quite literally have been dumped in this all together. You hear this mantra everywhere in TV commercials and stuff and government broadcasts. We're all in this together. Yeah, we bloody well are now, aren't we? And just going back to what I was talking about regarding the Q plan, what is said to be going on with the shutting down of all these paedophile rings and the child traffickers and all this, a lot of detractors from all of this, a lot of critics of the whole Q thing just completely reject it and don't place any stock in it at all. They will say, well, if this group really is working at rescuing children and shutting down these underground tunnels and taking down these criminal cabals, why don't they do it all at once and why don't they tell the public about it? Well, can you imagine how the general public would absolutely lose their minds and freak out and not be able to cope if they went from one day believing everything the government tells them and believing the mainstream media is their friend and is informing them of the truth of the world, to being told that the world is run by child torturing, murdering, adrenochrome drinking, dark occultists. That's a fairly difficult transition in a thought process to come to terms with. So if you put yourself in the position of this group, if you suspend your disbelief for a minute and imagine what you would do if you were in that position and you were working in one of these groups, you were on these missions, and you had to work out how you were going to handle it in terms of communicating it to the general public, would you really, sensibly, realistically, announce that blatantly all at once? Or would you consider that there needs to be a period of adjustment, a period of transition, whereby the public is primed and is prepared and is got ready for these revelations, which come along gradually, incrementally, rather than being dumped on people all at once? If that was me, I think that's the way I would probably do it. And I think that adds some potential value to the idea that this thing might really be going on. So there are other aspects of, you know, child abuse and Satanism, satanic ritual abuse and all this that are being drip fed into the mainstream media as well. And I wonder if this is all part of getting people slowly used to the idea that this world is actually quite a horrific place. And it will go on being ever more horrific until we face up to it. So I know it's difficult. I know it's unsettling. I know it's disturbing. I know people don't want to have to face up to it. But for as long as they deny it's happening, it's only going to get worse. Okay? So this week, there was a story about Mariah Carey's sister, right, who apparently used to be a drug addict, worked as a prostitute, a very far cry from what Mariah has done with her life. Her sister was talking about how when they were young, their mother used to take them to satanic ritual events, and they witnessed babies being stabbed and all kinds of other horrific stuff. This story has actually emerged before. A couple of years ago, Mariah Carey's sister was talking about how she remembers when she was little, and Mariah, her little sister, they got taken by their parents to these satanic rituals, and they witnessed all this stuff going on then. So there's a very well-known name that's now being implicated with all this stuff in terms of, family associations. And then we're going back a couple of years here, but there was the electronic dance music DJ and producer known as Avicii, and he had out a song, I forget the name of the song, but it had a video to it which blatantly depicted child trafficking gangs. So at the start of this video, you got this truck, and it's out in the wilderness somewhere, and these guys open up the back of the truck, and it's full of kids that are being trafficked. And two of these kids escape, and they start running away. They're running through fields and stuff, and these guys desperately go after them, and the kids reach the edge of a cliff and realize they've got nowhere left to run, and they jump over the cliff. And then later in the video, you've got some of these kids that have grown up. They're now adults, and they're going after their abusers. They track them down, and they seek retribution on them, and they take them out. Well, Avicii turned up dead in, I think it was 2017, in very suspicious circumstances. It was in a property owned by the Sultan of Oman, the royal family of that country. And there's all sorts of conflicting reports about how he died. It had been passed off as suicide, and his family was saying, he was depressed and he couldn't cope with the pressure of fame and all this, so he took his own life. And then later we hear that he's supposed to have stabbed himself with a broken wine bottle, which is a pretty terrible way to end it all if you decide you're going to. I'd have thought a bottle of pills would be a better way to go. But as always with these stories, there's all kinds of anomalies and all kinds of contradictions. And it also, so people at the time were saying, Avicii was trying to warn people about what was going on. He was placing it in his video. He was trying to communicate that child sex trafficking happens. Then we get the situation with Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington, who both died in very suspicious circumstances, a couple of months apart the other year. And they were friends, and it's said that they were working together on exposing these paedophile child sex trafficking networks, and they were about to make major revelations on this front, and then they both turn up dead. Chris Cornell in a hotel room in Detroit, and Chester Bennington in his California home, both having apparently committed suicide. So, yeah.
I got that Soundgarden album that day.
Right. So we're getting into some links with the music industry here and all this stuff. But, these stories have always been around for the likes of us that sift them out and research them. They've always been there, but we're just getting so many of them now. We're getting so many mentions of human trafficking and satanic ritual abuse and stuff filtering into the mainstream news here and there. So sooner or later, I feel the general public is going to be forced to confront these horrors, these realities. You're just not going to be able to hide from it anymore because it's just going to break surface. I felt it was getting very close to breaking surface when that Turkish news report came out on adrenochrome. So we've still got a way to go on that, but we might be closer than we think to all this stuff really putting its head above the parapet now.
But do you think that videos like Madonna's bath video that came during the lockdown are the repercussions of adrenochrome withdrawal?
Well, it's been said that they are, and I can't rule it out. It's certainly possible. Madonna looks like shit in that video, and she's in her bathroom in one video she did, and she's singing into her hairbrush.
Yeah.
And she's talking about fried fish. We need some fried fish. And it all seems very cryptic, and it's obviously code for something. And it's been identified that fried fish and references to fish are code words for adrenochrome, because I've been looking into this lately. So when Pizzagate emerged in 2016, we got used to all these food-related terms that were used by pedophiles to refer to kids. So chicken and pasta and pizza and hot dog. And you had the Podesta emails and the Hillary Clinton emails and Obama talking about flying in pizza from Chicago, especially to the White House. And people were speculating that this is individuals involved in the abuse of children communicating with each other using these terms. Well, it's the same thing with adrenochrome. And when you get references to white rabbits follow the white rabbit is a favorite phrase that comes out of the Q stuff very often. But I watched a compilation video recently of movie clips where you've got depictions of adrenochrome extraction right there in plain sight, going back decades, going back to the 90s, going back to the 80s. And if you know what you're looking for, it's all there. And there's so many references to fish, fried fish. And here we've got Madonna looking like she's melting down under lockdown and singing about fried fish. And people have speculated that she's suffering the withdrawal symptoms of not getting access to adrenochrome because this is said to be highly addictive. It's more addictive than heroin, supposedly. And these people just become reliant on it. And then you've got Tom Hanks and Ellen and all these other so-called celebrities that appear to be having a really hard time during lockdown, and they're making all these cryptic messages and stuff, and they look like shit. And it's certainly consistent with them not getting access to the adrenochrome. Also, there are pictures of many of these celebrities seemingly wearing ankle bracelets of the type that you get when you're under house arrest from the military. So Nicole Kidman was pictured with one of these. And you got some world leaders as well. I think Scott Morrison, the PM of Australia, has been pictured apparently with one of these ankle bracelets on. It's all very strange. And I don't think you can just dismiss all this as straight BS. There's something going on here.
Yeah, absolutely. And the most recent story, even though he was 97 years old, Sumner Redstone, controller of Viacom, CBS, dies at 97. He was stating that he would live forever as long as he continued to drink this particular wine. And I don't know, but, all of a sudden he died at 97. I mean, he's 97, but still. Did you see that old video that's cropped up of Dean Martin on a chat show back in the 70s? No.
Talking about Frank Sinatra's birthday. So, yeah, this was Dean Martin sometime in the 70s, and it was Frank Sinatra's 60th birthday at the time. And the host is saying Dean Martin is inebriated. He's had a good few drinks and he's becoming loose-tongued and he's slurring and cracking jokes and stuff. And the host says, what are you going to get Frank for his birthday? And he says, I don't know. It's difficult. How do you wrap glands?
Wow.
The audience starts laughing because they just don't know what he's talking about. They think he's just pissed and he's just rambling. But when you've done the research and you know what adrenochrome is all about and how it's extracted, and then you get a celebrity saying, how do you wrap glands to give to a fellow celebrity for his birthday, it becomes rather more sinister than just a throwaway comment on a chat show, doesn't it?
Wow. Yes. Well, we have much more to cover, folks, but we're running out of this first hour. And you know what, Mark, I'm just putting together Dan Harmon, Rick Morty, Dan Harmon and his baby rape video that has been exposed again. It's from 2009 and now it's been brought back to the surface. Childish Gambino, he got his start on Community, if I'm right about that. At least he got his most popularity. And of course, then that video, This Is America, where they're all in face masks shooting people, predicting pretty much exactly what America would be. But I didn't put the connection together between Dan Harmon and Childish Gambino until just now. And my brain's like, wait a minute, they used to work together. But to wrap up this first hour, let's make sure everybody knows what's going on in Mark Devlin's world and give all your contact details. And is the Cause and the Cure coming?
Well, The Cause and the Cure is out. Yeah, I got that book out a few months ago, and my intention had been to spend 2020 promoting it. And I was going to be going on tour and doing a few talks and conferences and stuff talking about the book. But a couple of other things came along to scupper those plans.
Just a few things.
And I've really spent all of this year addressing current issues, coronavirus related, and what's going on outside of that. And I've not really done any research into the music industry, which is my regular thing. I've been intending to start writing Musical Truth Volume 3 It's all in my head. I know exactly what's going into the book, but I've just not been able to focus and concentrate and find the time to knuckle down and start tapping away at the keyboard on that, though I do intend to start it next month. But the rest of this year has been spent for me just addressing the madness situation, and I've put out a video each weekend, and so many new people have discovered my work as a result of this. Prior to March, I was floundering around on YouTube with 9.5k subscribers. I just could not cross that 10,000 barrier, no matter how many videos I put out. And then the coronavirus thing happened. I started talking about it. I started giving my views. I did a couple of videos where I was ranting. I was losing my mind, and I was just expressing how I felt very candidly. I went into my car and just exploded on this one particular video. And a lot of people found me as a result of that. And I've now shot up to about 32,000 subscribers on YouTube. And I'll get emails every day from people saying, thank you for your output. We really look forward to your videos. You articulate what's on our minds. You say exactly how we're feeling. Thank you for your work and all this, which is very gratifying. But nobody seemed to, or very few people seemed to show that interest when I was just talking about the music business. But yeah, that's where I'm now at. So my YouTube channel is youtube.com/MarkDevlinTV. And I still put up a video each weekend there, just giving my assessment on things. And I think what people like about it is the fact that I'm just brutally honest about how I'm feeling. So I'll go on there sometimes and I'm pissed off, I'm dejected, I'm discouraged, and I just let that show and I articulate it, and people say, yep, we know where you're coming from with that. And then other days I'll be much more motivated, much more fired up, and I'll have some good positive news for people to try and inspire them. And I think people just like the fact that I'm like a friggin' yo-yo, just going up and down with my moods and emotions. So yeah, that's going to continue for the foreseeable, just putting my videos out on YouTube. The Cause and the Cure is my first forays into allegorical fiction. So I'd written Musical Truth Volumes 1 and 2, which were non-fiction, and I really wanted to try my hand at a novel. I had an idea of all sorts of things that I wanted to say that I would have difficulty saying in the form of non-fiction, but you can get away with when you pass it off as a fictional story. So the story takes place ostensibly in Oxford, my home city, in 1990. So it's like a period piece from 30 years ago. And it really transports you back nostalgically to what life was like in 1990. And on the surface of it, it's a sort of murder mystery thriller in the vein of Agatha Christie, I guess, or Inspector Morse or something like that. But there's so many more elements to it. I've tried to encode it with all kinds of spiritual teachings and all kinds of esoteric knowledge. So if you seek to gain more from it than just the straight surface narrative story, I think there's a treasure trove of little clues and indicators that I've placed in there that an alert reader will be able to discern and say, oh yeah, I understand what that's a metaphor for. And yes, I understand what that's a reference to. So that was my intention with it. Nice. And I'm continuing to market that. So yeah, that's where I'm at in life at the moment, brother.
Fantastic. Yeah, I feel like 2020 was written by a British satirical science fiction writer. Yeah. Maybe
it's very surreal.
Yeah, it's so surreal. It's
I mean, the masks could be a Monty Python sketch, really, couldn't they?
Exactly. It's either Terry or Terry Pratchett maybe, or Neil Gaiman, or Terry from Monty Python that's writing this script. I think they programmed the AI that's writing this script or something.
Exactly. Imagine if you told people in January of 2020 that this summer you're going to be walking around with a face nappy on every time you go into a store or every time you get on a bus or a train. And you're going to be standing behind a bit of tape 2 meters away from the person in front. And you're going to be going one way around the supermarket. They'd have told you to get off the heavy duty stuff you're smoking, to get with reality. You don't know what you're talking about. They'd have laughed you out of the room.
No doubt.
Yet, here we are.
No doubt.
Here we are.
And as far as YouTube goes, folks, I still get messages on my YouTube channel saying, why'd you quit? Because YouTubers don't seem to realize that there's such thing as podcast apps. I would always make the podcast into a video and then put it up on YouTube, but that was never the the formal way to get this show. It's, of course, on every podcast application out there, no matter what you're listening on: Spotify, Stitcher, iTunes, iPhone, Android, Google, you name it. This show is on there. Just type in the Freezone with Freeman Fly, and boom, there it is. But I intentionally stopped putting the podcast up on YouTube because there's so much great work on that YouTube channel that I want you to use, that I don't want lost. But it doesn't help if I preserve the YouTube channel and nobody uses the past work. But there are entire conferences and lectures and guests and just amazing stuff, all through my YouTube channel that is all relevant now. And the fact that everybody, well, not everybody, but I still get messages saying, why did you quit? It's a little frustrating, guys. It's a little frustrating because all the links are right there in the show description to follow this show on every other platform other than YouTube. And so hopefully they'll figure it out. Hopefully they'll realize I never quit, and freemantv.com is the place you need to go. And follow me on Twitter at Freeman TV. Everything, if you just do a search for Freeman Fly, you'll find all my connections, and then you can find everything that you want. I highly recommend you follow me on Twitter. That's where I share the news that I want you to know. It's not my personal opinions or anything like that. It's something that I think you need. So I Twitter for you, just so you know. So follow me at Freeman TV on Twitter. I did a little test yesterday to see how many people were actually getting my tweets, and it was 420. So 400 out of 11,000. I'll live with that, but at least 420.
Good date.
Yeah, at least 420 people are getting the messages that I'm putting out, so that's awesome. And of course, I always have to thank Steve Mercer, producer Steve at freemantv.com. If you want to leave him a show note and let him know how the shows are going and who you'd like to listen to, producer Steve at freemantv.com. And always you can write me. Yes, dude, Steve, he does it. He's just been doing this for me for years. Steve just, keeps the ball rolling, doesn't ask for anything other than I give him the props at the end, and he doesn't even ask for that. He just does it because he cares. And just like you, Mark, at this point, all the research is kind of put onto the side. There's too much going on in 2020 for us to talk about anything but. So we're going to get deeper into this, folks, and there's much, much more to come. So much I want to talk to Mark about. So I hope you'll come over to freemantv.com and subscribe and get the bonus hours to keep the show rolling. That's what keeps this show free, because we have to pay for our own servers so that they can't censor us, all right? That's the true beauty of this. It's ours. So I want to thank you all so much for coming in here every week and for supporting my efforts and the efforts of my guests. And I hope you will all jump over to Mark Devlin's Pick Up the Cause and the Cure. I'll have the link right here in the show notes for you. So that's the way we're going to go now, is you pretty much have to be a satirist to be able to even speak any truth in this crazy world. So much more to come, if you remember. So get ready, guys. We're going to jump into this. And the rest of you guys, thank you so much for being here. And I really appreciate you. And we will see you next week.